Hi, my name is Brian. I'm the owner of Obispo Productions, and I'm here to talk to you about my personal journey when I started my photography business. I know there's a lot of YouTubers out there who talk about starting a business full-time. I'm here to talk to you about starting a business while you actually have a full-time job and you're trying to do this on the side. When I was in college, I knew I wanted to do something with photography and videography. I just didn't know exactly how to do it. This was back in the days of film, and so it was very expensive. I remember I took a year off. I worked for a company called Life Touch, where we took photos of high school kids, junior highs, and I really enjoyed it. It was fun, but the problem was it was seasonal, and so you had to find other things to do. And being that this was film, you had to have your own camera pretty much, you had to buy your film, and you had to process your film. Just for a one roll of medium format film was $20 to have it processed. Time went on. I basically said no to being a photographer because of the cost involved. I remember going into one of the stores and I said, do you have anything that's relatively cheap? And the guy said, no, photography is expensive to get into. And that was just to get a camera, not to mention the lights and the backdrops and everything else that you need to run a successful photography business. So I basically put it on hold, or kind of said it's not going to happen. So I got married, got a full-time job, everything was typical, and then my wife and I got pregnant, and my wife, after giving birth to our first son, decided to not go back to work. At first it was okay until the economy crashed. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but everything got more expensive. My position took a huge pay cut, but I still had a full-time job, and I needed some way to make up the difference. And this is where I said, maybe I could do something with photography. The digital revolution had just started, literally that year or a year before. So I picked up a digital camera, an old Rebel XT with a kit lens, 18 to 55 millimeter lens, and an SD card, and basically said, what can I do with it? So I researched how to become a digital photographer. There was nothing out there. YouTube was present, was there, but there was really nothing on digital photography and how to become a photographer during those days. It was real secretive with a lot of photographers. They didn't want to give out their skills. They didn't want to give out their knowledge. And it was very competitive during that time. So I just kept trying. I would read books, go actually to local Barnes and Nobles and actually read books, buy magazines. So I ended up taking a class at Brooks College in Santa Barbara. And it was probably the move that sparked my career in, or I should say side career in digital photography. They taught us the basics, the difference of shooting with a slow shutter and shooting with a closed aperture, things that I had no idea. I honestly didn't even know at the time how to change my aperture manually on that digital Rebel camera. It was, again, a series of buttons that you had to push on the back or hold down to change your aperture. And maybe that's new to you and you're like, what is an aperture? But we'll get into that in future videos. But just know that I've come a long way, and I know you can come a long way too if I can do it. So in doing this, I had to figure out a way to make some money. So I actually contacted local high school reunions, and I called them up, cold called them, said, hey, I would like to come and photograph your reunion. And they said, well, we don't have any money for you. And I said I would shoot it for free as long as they allowed me to bring a printer and a computer and a backdrop and take pictures of couples, and I would print the picture of the couples right on the spot and sell them for $10 a piece. Looking back, that was crazy because there was so much cost involved. My time, of course, but the wear and tear on my car, the wear and tear on my equipment, the cost of the ink, the cost of the paper, all of that stuff added up. So eventually I got some better equipment. I got an on-camera flash, I got some extra SD cards, and things kind of They weren't taking off, but I was making some extra money. And it was enough to kind of keep it going and keep building. At the same time, it did help pay little things like, paying for dinner or paying for groceries. So eventually, I was contacted by a friend of the family to photograph a wedding. And this was a wedding over at the coast. We're here in California, and I had never shot a wedding before, and I was scared to death. So I had gotten a lot better as a photographer, but I was still shooting on auto mode. I was letting the camera make all the decisions for me. I did have the on-camera flash, and that seemed to work. During that wedding, my wife was able to assist me. Her parents are actually invited to the wedding as well, and they were able to watch our kids. Everything seemed to work out. I did get yelled at by the caterer or the venue host or somebody for taking too long for what we consider sunset photos, but it was a learning experience for me, and I basically never forgot that. I remember waking up the next day and feeling like I had been in a car accident because of the stress level. So after shooting the wedding, I now had sample images I could use. I used them for business cards, for prints, for a sample album, and probably the most important, for a website. And with those, things slowly began to ramp up. I was able to book a couple more weddings that following year. I started to shoot more family photos. Probably the biggest change that I made was I started to second shoot with other photographers. And I did this throughout California. And again, looking back, it's probably a little crazy. I had a young family that was relying on me, and I would drive off down to San Diego, all the way up to Northern California, to the Bay Area, and I would meet these photographers I had never met in my life, and I would second shoot for them. So basically, I was looking for additional sample images, stuff that could help me promote myself. So how did I get those second shooter jobs? I would go on to like Craigslist and photography forums, and I would just promote myself, and I would say, this is the equipment I have, and here's a sample of my work. They'd hire me. Not for very much. It would probably be a couple $100, enough to pay my gas, to pay for some food, and profit-wise, again, maybe making $100. But the experience that I got was invaluable. Things that I learned not to do, things I learned to do. Sometimes I'd work with some of the top photographers in the state in some of the most beautiful venues in the state. And again, all I was asking for was, can I use these photos in my portfolios? And most of the time they were okay with that. So the next thing that really ramped up my business was the website. Your website is so important. It still is. It's what everybody is going to look at. At the time, I remember I spent, I think, $2,500. I know that's a lot of money for a website. I think the thing was called Live Books, and this was 15 years ago. And they specialized in wedding photographers' websites, and it helped with your search engine optimization and the keywords and everything. I remember spending that money and thinking, what am I doing? Am I really going to spend this amount of money on a website? But what I learned was your website is so important that it's okay to make that investment. And again, back then, that was the thing. Nowadays, you have Wix and Squarespace and WordPress. I just changed over from a WordPress site. WordPress is a great website to go with because of the cost, the low cost. I mean, actually, you can get into it almost free. The problem with WordPress is if you don't understand coding, if you don't understand how to make your information private, you can deal with hacks and you can deal with software issues. I dealt with some of those myself. I had to pay a lot of money to get things fixed. So I now have switched over to Squarespace. Squarespace is a great site, and it does still take some time to get everything organized, but it's worth it. So the next thing that really sparked the business was bridal shows. I know a lot of photographers aren't 100% if bridal shows work. At the time, and I'm probably talking about 7 or 8 years ago, bridal shows in our area were the top thing. If you weren't at a bridal show, you probably weren't going to book more than 3 or 4 weddings for the year. And so I had enough sample albums, I had enough sample prints. I spent the money to be in the show, which was, again, expensive and time consuming, because you have to build your set. You've got to get all the prints, everything ready. So if you want to do bridal shows, just know that they're a lot of work, especially if you have a full-time job, but it can be done. Fast forward about 5 years, I was now shooting 20 to 30 weddings a year. That included engagement sessions for most of them. I also offered a special engagement session where I would go anywhere in California. We're centrally located, so it wasn't too bad, but still it was half a day to a whole day's worth of work to do those engagement sessions. My wife did the editing for me, which saved us tons of time, saved me tons of time. So I considered myself a full-time photographer, specializing in weddings and portraits, but I still had a full-time job. I got away with it, I think, personally, because my wife did the editing. You don't have to go that route if you don't want to. You can kind of keep it small, do the weddings you want to do. You'll find when you're booking weddings and it's the off season and you haven't been able to book anything and you have bills to pay, you'll take the work. Fast forward a couple more years and I was shooting close to 40 weddings a year, and throw in those engagement sessions and occasional family sessions and senior sessions. It was a full-time job. And I got away with it because, again, my wife was home and she was able to do the editing. If you have that option, I'd say great, use that. So I'll just say that photography is hard. Weddings are like marathons. You're on your feet for 10, 12 hours. But the flip side is they do pay well. Weddings especially pay well. So you're probably asking, did you ever quit your full-time job? And I haven't, because I really enjoy my full-time job. I do communication and media work and graphic design. I've gotten to the point now where I want to pull back from the photography. We don't need as much income. My income has gone up with my regular full-time job. I want to give back. Part of my job in the past was working with kids, young adults, and teaching them photography and video and graphic design. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed seeing their growth. I really enjoyed seeing them have a spark of interest. So if you're like me and you're looking for an opportunity to make some extra money, you have a family and you have bills to pay, this is an option that you can take. Again, you do not need to do this full time. You may find that it grows into a full-time job and you want to make it your full-time job. Just know that there are things you need to consider. So if this video helped you and you enjoyed it, hit the like button. And if you want to see future videos, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. And again, I'm Brian with Obispo Productions, and I wish you all the best in this journey called life.